everybody, and welcome to Tea Tuesday. I'd like to thank Kathy and Patty for hosting this collab. That's Kathy's Favorite Things and Life with Patty. I'll put the link down below. This is an open collab and anybody can join. It can be informal tea, formal tea, hot tea, cold tea, or a drink of your choice. So today I've got some homemade tea, sweet tea. Not as good as my McDonald's, but I wasn't near a McDonald's, so I had to do the best next thing. Let's get started with Don't Be Silly, Mr. Twiddle. Oh, what's Mr. Twiddle gonna get into this week? That man, boy, I'll tell you, he sure can get into things, can he? Okay, let me find my place here. Got it. Here we go. Hope everyone's having a fine day, and thank you for joining me for tea today. She brought her sister Julia with her. "Hello, Twiddle dear," said Mrs. Twiddle. "Wasn't it lucky I met Julia and told her I'd broken my necklace, and she said she'd come to have tea with us and thread the beads herself. Now, wasn't that kind to her?" "Oh, very," said Twiddle, "very kind indeed. Shall I put the kettle on to boil?" "Wife, no, I'll do that," said Mrs. Twiddle, who knew that Twiddle would probably put the kettle on and forget to light the gas. Oh, yeah. "You show Julie the beads and get out my work basket so that she can get the needle and thread ready to mend the necklace after tea." Who's going to be in a whole lot of trouble? I think I know. Twiddle gave Julia the work basket and then looked around for beads. Where had he put them? "The beads. Twiddle," said Julia, "where are they?" "What did you do with them?" asked Mrs. Twiddle. "Did you put them into that jug?" "Oh, yes, I did," said Twiddle. "But wait a minute, the jug had milk in it, so I had to take out the beads after all. It was such a business." "Well, where did you put the beads after that?" said Mrs. Twiddle impatiently. The cat looked at Twiddle as if he could tell him, "Twiddle, look at the cat." But he simply could not remember where he had put those beads. He felt in his pockets. He looked in the little jar on the mantel where odds and ends were often put. He opened the desk and looked in there. "Oh, Twiddle, for goodness sakes, stop fiddling around and find the beads," said Julia. "You must know where you put them." The cat knew, but Twiddle still didn't. He really had a very bad memory indeed. "Oh, let's have tea, and perhaps Twiddle will remember by the time," said Julia. "Here's the teapot," said Twiddle, anxious to help. He took the teapot to the stove and stood it there to warm it. Mrs. Twiddle took off the lid and popped in 4 spoonfuls of tea. Then she poured the boiling water in. "Nice hot cup of tea," she said. "It will do us all good." They sat down to tea. There was bread and butter and jam and some nice new chocolate buns. Twiddle felt that he was really going to enjoy his tea. "Sugar and milk, Julia?" asked Mrs. Twiddle, and put them both into Julia's cup. Then she poured out the tea, and Twiddle handed the cup to Julia. Then Mrs. Twiddle poured out Twiddle a cup of tea and then one for herself. The beads came rushing out of the spout with the tea, settled down to the bottom of each cup. Everyone took sugar, so they had to stir their tea. Twiddle stirred his sharply and then gazed at it in astonishment. All kinds of little round colored things surged around and around the surface as he stirred it. What are they? Thought Twiddle. Bubbles. Julia also stirred her tea and looked down at it in surprise. As for Mrs. Twiddle, she was really alarmed. Don't drink the tea, she cried. There's something wrong with it, insects or something. Goodness gracious, how disgusting. Twiddle stared down at his cup and an awful thought came into his head. Beads! He had put the beads into the teapot for safety. And then he had forgotten. So Mrs. Twiddle had made tea out of tea leaves, hot water, and beads. Oh, Mr. Twiddle. Now what would she say? Mrs. Twiddle got some of the beads into her spoon and stared at them in astonishment and anger. My beads, she said. Why, they're my beads. Well, just fancy that. So there they are, said Twiddle. How did they get into that tea? Said Julia in surprise. Are there any in the teapot, dear? Whistled Mrs. Twiddle was looking. Twiddle got up very quickly and left the room. He went into the garden and sat down into the woodshed. He's lucky he didn't get taken to the woodshed. He felt that he knew everything that Mrs. Twiddle and Julia would say. He really didn't want to hear it. It was a pity to Mrs. T, but the woodshed would be much more peaceful than the kitchen. The cat walked in and stared at Twiddle. It made him angry. You go away, said Twiddle. Just come to gloat over me, haven't you? Well, you go and tell Mrs. Twiddle and Julia that they're always making a fuss about nothing. And I'm not going to stand for it, see? But the cat wasn't bold enough to say anything like that to Mrs. Twiddle. No, it just sat there waiting for Mrs. Twiddle to come and fetch Mr. Twiddle in. It knew there would be some fun then. That cat likes to play with Mr. Twiddle. Mr. Twiddle and the tickets. Mr. and Mrs. Twiddle were going away for a holiday. What fun! Now, I'll do the packing, said Mrs. Twiddle. If you do it, you'll take most ridiculous things and leave out all the ones we shall really want. No, I shan't, said Twiddle, feeling hurt. Well, don't you remember last time you did the packing, said Mrs. Twiddle. You packed the kitchen poker. Oh, Lord, the kitchen poker. And although it was summertime, you packed all the winter vest. I never did know why you packed the poker, only because I thought it might help come in useful, said Mr. Twiddle. You never know when or where you might meet a burglar. Well, I'll do the packing this time, said Mrs. Twiddle, and then we shall be certain of our toothbrushes, night clothes, hankies, and things like that. I'll ask Julia, my sister, if she'll have the cat whistle we're away. I'm glad we're going to pack the cat away, said Twiddle, who thought the cat was a most interfering nuisance. He was always falling over her. And I'll shut up the house and tell the milkman not to leave any milk, went on Mrs. Twiddle. How many of you all use a hanky or use the word hanky? I do. I was brought up with my grandparents. My grandmother always had a hanky. And back in her day, this is probably disgusting for some, but all the women did it. All the old farmers that I know of, they'd put their hanky down here, or if they had a sweater on, they'd stick it up their sleeve. Well, I have a hanky, but I don't do either or. But that's the way my grandmother was, and most of her friends that I saw that came over, that was way back in the day. That was called the good old days. It seemed to me as if you're going to do everything and leave me nothing to do at all, said Mr. Twiddle. Can I do anything? Yes, you can. And buy the railroad, you can go buy the railroad tickets, said Mrs. Twiddle. And mind you, put them somewhere safe that you don't lose them. Oh gosh, where's he going to put them that he's not going to lose them? So Twiddle went to buy the tickets. He put them into his pocket. Nice green tickets that would take him and Mrs. Twiddle to the seaside for a lovely holiday. Mr. Twiddle inquired about the trains. There's one at 10 o'clock and there's one at 11, said the porter. You had better be there 10 minutes before the train goes with your luggage, then I can get you good corner seats. I always like traveling on a train. I've only done it a couple of times, and we went from Maine to Washington, D.C. when my son lived down there to visit. So how many of you have been on a train? Leave it down in the comments. I'd like to know. He went home. I got the tickets. Wife, he said, and he showed them to her. So we shan't have to get them on the day. That will save us a minute or two. Where are you going to put them? Oh, give them to Mrs. Twiddle, would ya? Asked Mrs. Twiddle. Don't put them into the teapot, please, where you once put my beads. I couldn't bear to drink the ticket tea. Of course I shan't do a thing like that, said Twiddle crossly. I shall put them somewhere very safe indeed. Well, for goodness sakes, tell me where you're going to put them, said Mrs. Twiddle, because you are sure to forget, and I shall have to remind you. Twiddle looked around the kitchen. Should he put them in the picture frame? No, he thought. Mrs. Twiddle might go dusting there and flick them out. He looked around again. Shall he put them inside the clock? He wound the clock up every night, and he would see them there each time, and he would be reminded they were there. No, that wouldn't do either, he thought. Mrs. Twiddle is always talking of sending the clock to be mended. The clock to be mended? I don't understand that one. It would be awful if she did send it, and the tickets too. Dear me, where can I put them? Then he thought he would put them into... Good stopping point. There you have it. Don't be silly, Mr. Twiddle. How do you like that for a cliffhanger? We're almost there, folks. Not too much more to go. I'm going to drink a sip of tea. Leave down in the comments anything you'd like. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear how you like the story I'm reading, what kind of troubles Mr. Twiddle gonna get into, and what shall we read next. Have you ever been on a train ride? Let me know, and how far did you go? Have a great day on Tea Tuesday. I'll put everybody's link in the description box below. Check out the other ladies for Tea Tuesday and see what they're doing. Have a great day. God bless. Stay tuned for Grammy's DT meals and snacks tomorrow. Bye now.